Gents, I just want to pause the episode for a moment to let you know about the Strong Men of Value Academy. You will have heard me refer to it a number of times, and I want to bring more attention to it. So this isn't just a program, it's a life-changing environment and community of men who are focused on personal and professional growth. We're looking at areas of relationships, wealth, and health, things to help you thrive and maximize your life. Imagine having bi-monthly one-on-one coaching sessions with myself, weekly group coaching calls, and an incredible brotherhood of high achievers by your side. Now, we're diving into resilience, leadership, and holistic growth to not just succeed in your career, but to thrive in your health and your relationships. Your journey to greatness, it starts here. So join the movement and you can apply for the Strong Men of Value Academy. You can head to themanthatcanproject.com to find out more.
The Man That Can Project podcast, a podcast empowering career-driven men to live more fulfilling lives. We are here to challenge your beliefs, redefine success, and talk about the important stuff in a relatable way. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. My name's Lachlan Stuart. Let's get into it. Welcome back. I want to discuss this topic. Stop stress spilling into your relationships. This is really relevant in my life at the moment, and I guess a bit of a life update for everyone listening along. Growing a business is one of the most satisfying and rewarding things of all time, and as the Man That Can Project goes to a whole new level, I'm excited to be partnering with a great mate and someone who I believe has a skill set and a purpose and a very similar value alignment to help me and our community of the Strong Men of Value Academy go to a whole new level. And that's focusing a lot around mindfulness, so doing that inner work, the physical components, so building a strong exterior, being confident in who you are, learning to deal with adversity and resilient, and also gratitude, focusing on that. Now, I thought when part of me is like, I wish everything could be as simple as a handshake deal, but you always hear about these things that go wrong. So we've gone the proper way, and we've sought out lawyers and doing everything contractually, which has been a huge learning experience. But one thing I have noticed, my stress levels, holy shit, are through a whole new, just in a new ballpark. Trying to navigate that and work out things, proof documents, learn about the tax ramifications of things while on top, still being a husband and a coach and everything else that's going on in my life. As I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there listening going, yep, life is busy. I get that. We all go through that stuff. There was a moment today, and I'm grateful for this moment, and I'll share this with you throughout today's yarn, but it was definitely eye-opening for me. And it made me start thinking about what stress am I spilling into my relationships? And I want you to think about not only your intimate relationships, what about relationships with colleagues, with friends, with family? So I want you to think, or even ask yourself this question: are you aware how stress is influencing your relationships? Some key things that I want to talk about is how stress is contagious. And the importance of how you deal with stress and the impacts that it has on your relationships, and why it is important to reframe your stress. And then I also want to share a little bit that I read earlier, because I was doing a heap of reading about it, but how men and women react differently to relationship stress. And I think it's important to share this with you because, gents, everyone listening, whether you're in a relationship or your mother or your sister, it's good to understand this and obviously look into it, because we don't all experience things the same way. And the more, I guess, we understand, the more empathy and compassion we can have. But the most important part about all of this is, from my lesson today, is I need to own my shit. So today, Dane, and if you're listening, mate, personally called Dane after our interaction just to apologize for how I was showing up and how I recognized that stress was frustrating me. So I had just finished training, was hanging out in the stretch room, stretching, and all day and probably the last month, I've been running by a very tight time schedule, trying to get all the things that need to be done in order to cross the T's and dot the I's. And that comes with a certain level of stress because there isn't much wiggle room in my day at the moment. There isn't much downtime to stop for conversations, for coffees, all of that sort of stuff, right? First world problems, I get it. But for me, it's running at such a high level, eventually cracks start to appear. And this has been going on for longer than I'm aware, and I'm sure, family and my wife and even friends have been on the receiving end of my bluntness from this. And so when Dane came in to have a yarn, I was extremely blunt with him. I put my headphones in and sort of had a bit of a half-assed conversation, and then sort of rolled over and was like, oh, I hope he goes away because I need to keep thinking. And when I ended up, finishing up my stretching, I jumped in the sauna. And the beautiful thing about going to the sauna at bloody 2 p.m., I was the only one in there, and I had time to think. And for that moment, I wasn't thinking about work. I was thinking about the interaction that I just had with Dane and how disappointed I was in how I was showing up. And one thing that's been really important for me over the last 12 to 18 months is really living my life in a way that I'm going to be remembered how I want to be remembered, not by what my actions are. And I felt when I was sitting there, I was like, how I just showed up and how I just interacted with Dane was not how I would remember someone going, this person always made time for people. He was empathetic and caring. For me personally, if I'd interacted with me then, I would have been like, right, he's stressed and he's busy and he's highly strung, but he doesn't have time for me. So there are two different outcomes of how you can be remembered in the world. And for some of you, it may not matter. But I drew a line in the sand, like I said, 12 to 18 months ago, and I don't want to be remembered for how hard I worked and for how busy I was and productive I was. I want to be remembered as someone who made time for those, who made everyone feel valued and heard. And today was, a great moment to make me realize that I'm not where I need to be yet. And that's completely okay. And I'm grateful that I had the awareness to go, fuck, man, sort that out. So what I did when I got out of the sauna, I called Dane and I was like, mate, I just want to apologize for our conversation before. I feel I was very blunt and I didn't give you the time, and that's not how I want to show up. And I said, I've got a lot on my mind at the moment, but that is no excuse. And what that then highlighted for me is I need to really check in on that, but I also need to develop and continue developing my stress management. I thought I was good at dealing with stress, and I thought I was mentally resilient and self-aware, and I am to a degree, but we all have flaws and areas of improvement, and we got to acknowledge it to grow. And after that conversation, I was like, cool, I need to read into this a bit more. I need to see what other people's thoughts are around this, how this has impacted other people's relationships, what they've done, what they've become aware of, things to do differently. And I went down a bit of a rabbit hole, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm going to talk about this on the podcast, which is why we're here. So a few reasons why I don't want my stress to spill into the relationships is, one, it's contagious. And one of the most important things for me is every interaction, I want people to walk away from time spent with me feeling better. Right? Whatever that looks like, whether they're happier, they're more confident, they felt valued, heard, all of that. I just want them to feel better. But stress is fucking contagious. So if people can see me being highly strung, if people feel me being blunt, like I'm impatient, that's going to get them in a more heightened state. I don't want you guys to experience that as a result of how I'm conducting myself. So moving through, I then started reading and thinking, like, how is this way that I'm dealing with stress currently impacting me? And I'm very aware that when stress comes into my life, I become distracted. I withdraw and I do become less affectionate. And just even saying that out loud, it's like, I don't want that. I don't want to be distracted. I don't want to be withdrawn from my wife and my mates and my clients. And I don't want to be less affectionate. I want the complete opposite. I want to be more focused. I want to be more engaged. I want to be more affectionate. And by bottling these things up, I do get short. I feel anxious and I really lack that focus. So there are a couple of things that I experienced, and I'm sure you have your own experiences of this. So if you're comfortable living with the way that it impacts your lifestyles and your relationships, well, you're probably not getting much value from this conversation. But if you're sitting there going, I completely agree, I do get distracted, I feel withdrawn and less affectionate among other things, you need to ask yourself, what can I do to change that? How do I want to respond through stress? Because stress, as well, you would have heard in other podcasts, isn't always a bad thing. It's just when it does creep into other areas. And that brings me to the next point of like how we can reframe stress. Right? The challenge comes is when you don't feel like you have the resources, to deal with stress. When people experience a stressor, but they feel like they have resources, it's generally a better stress. And for me today, as I mentioned, I felt like I was running out of time. It was costing me more money fucking around with the lawyers. I didn't feel like I had support to talk to many people. So because I was focused on I was looking at them in more of a pessimistic mindset, and it wasn't an abundant view of things, it was stressing me out even more. Rather than going, hey, look, I do have time. I do have the financial needs. Yeah, it might not be what I wanted to spend, but I'm very fortunate that I've got the money for this. So I can cope with it. And that's, I guess, brings me to that first point that's really helpful with how you can deal with stress and become aware of it, is sit down and go through that thing. Why am I specifically stressed about this thing? Is it because I am running out of time, money? I don't feel like I have support. What is it? What is the real challenge here? And if you can become clear on that, you now put yourself in a position with a piece of paper in front of you to go, hey, this is what I now need to do to work through this. I need to maybe schedule more time. I need to find some resources, financial resources. So another thing to be mindful of here is communicating the stress effectively. Today, I could have very well said, and I always personally struggle with this thing. Am I being too vulnerable? Am I making excuses? How are people viewing me? But I feel as well, if I do need that time to think, if I do need that time by myself, it's really important to let those who are closest to me know, hey, right now I'm stressed about XYZ. This is why I feel like I'm stressed. If I do come across blunt or a bit withdrawn, it's not personal. It's because I'm working through this stuff, and I'm working at a pace to get it sorted as quickly as possible, so I can get back to the person that you know and love, and really showing up as the man that I want to be. Is another extremely important point there. Now, just before I wrap up, I want to keep this episode short and sharp, but it was more just me voicing my thoughts here about men and women react differently to relationship stress. So this was from an article that I read. So these aren't my own words, but I thought it was quite interesting to read, so I wanted to share it. Men and women react differently to stress. One of the fundamental reasons for this has to do with varying stress hormones. When stress strikes, the body releases hormones called cortisol and epinephrine that raise blood pressure and circulate blood sugar level. Oxytocin is then released from the brain, countering the impact of cortisol and epinephrine by relaxing emotions. Men release less oxytocin than women when they are stressed, meaning they have a stronger reaction from both the cortisol and epinephrine. A study published by the Psychological Review suggested that this caused women to be more likely to handle stress by tending and befriending. That is nurturing those around them in an effort to both protect themselves and their young. Men, however, release smaller doses of oxytocin, which makes them more likely to have that fight or flight response when it comes to stress, either repressing their emotions and escaping the situation or fighting back. So it's interesting to look at, and I think it's, if you do your own research and spend more time thinking about your emotions and stress and things that work well for you to de-stress, you can then share that with your partner or your friends and vice versa, because then you can create this great communication gateway, because we aren't mind readers. Your friends aren't mind readers. So if you're able to do the work and then share that, you're going to build better relationships, more understanding relationships. If you got value from this episode, please share it. Take the time to leave a review, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday's episode. We've got a great guest, Daz. Another Daz, it seems to be the name of the month on the podcast, but this will be an episode that you do not want to miss. Do something today to be better for tomorrow. Thank you for listening to the Man That Can Project podcast. My name is Lachlan Stuart, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. If you did, please take a moment to rate and review the Man That Can Project on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our newest episodes. We'll see you again next time.